the story that so many of you have been contacting me about. The ugly and hateful tone that's being used against the President of the United States at what appear to be a growing number of events around the country may be now eclipsed by what I'm about to share with you. This is a pastor, albeit of a small church in Tempe, Arizona, who said this over the weekend about the death of Senator Ted Kennedy and about the President of the United States.
I don't want him to be a martyr. We don't need another holiday. I'd like to see him die like Ted Kennedy of brain cancer.
On its own, that story could be seen by some as the ranting of a madman, but when connected to the increase of threats against the president, as detailed to us by several sources, it becomes a story of some national significance. And here's another reason that story becomes more important. You know who was sitting in the church when Pastor Steven Anderson suggested that the president should die? Let me show you, because it also goes back to our previous reporting. This man, identified as Chris, who was seen later outside the president's event in Phoenix wielding an AR-15. Again, outside the president's event wielding an AR-15. He was in the church listening to that. In case you missed it, here's what the pastor said on the eve of the president's arrival.
You're going to tell me that I'm supposed to pray for the socialist devil, murderer, infanticide who wants to see young children, and he wants to see babies killed through abortion and partial birth and all these different things. You're going to tell me I'm supposed to pray for God to give him a good lunch tomorrow while he's in Phoenix, Arizona? Nope. I'm not going to pray for his good. I'm going to pray that he dies and goes to hell.
I'm going to pray that he dies and goes to hell. Here now is what a nonchalant Chris, that was the guy carrying the AR-15 who had been to that church service and heard that message. Here's what Chris has to say about the president and about his pastor.
I concur. I think our country would be a lot better off if God were to send this man where he's going now instead of later.
By the way, this pastor has had at least one other run-in with law enforcement that we know of, and we've been drilling down an awful lot on this character. He details it, by the way, on a videotape that we've gotten our hands on. This is right after he'd been arrested by the Border Patrol.
Well, let me ask this. Are you placing me under arrest?
You are under arrest.
And what crime am I being charged with?
Hey, these guys are telling me that a canine alerted to your vehicle for the presence.
And I've asked repeatedly for that dog to be brought back out because I say that it didn't happen. And they are refusing to get the dog back out because they know that they're not telling the truth.
You can do one
because I wouldn't answer their questions, they came up with that.
Or I'm going to take you out of the car.
Well, let me ask this. When you place someone under arrest, don't you have to put them under arrest for something specific?
I'm a police officer. I'm ordering you out of the car.
Will you answer my question, police officer?
Yeah, I'm a police
What
officer.
are you placing me under arrest for?
You're fair to obey me right now.
So I have to obey you by law?
Yes, you do.
Even when you're stopping me without cause?
Given what we have just disclosed, is this pastor himself a threat? Is he, more generally, part of the collective threat that seems to be being manifested against the nation's first African-American president? Not just in his area, but around the country. That's what we really want to drill down on. Joining us now from Washington, former Deputy Assistant Director of the United States Secret Service, John Tomlinson. Mr. Tomlinson, thank you, sir, for taking time to be with us.
Thank you for having me.
I am thinking, and I'm going to ask you this question right out of the chute. If this pastor was an imam, wouldn't you guys be all over him by now?
Well, what the Secret Service has to do in every threat case is determine whether the case merits prosecution as a threat or whether it's distasteful or rude or in some circumstances arrogant. That's what the investigation is trying to ferret out at this point. The Secret Service wants to be very deliberate because there's a lot at stake.
Have you paid, do you know at this point, and it's okay if this is confidential and you can't reveal it, I certainly understand. Do you know if the Secret Service has, in fact, paid him a visit?
I do not know. I do know that it's an ongoing investigation, one the Secret Service and its partners in Arizona and Washington take very seriously. So they'll pursue that to the.
Let me go back to my original question again, because I'm a Christian, and you know I pray and I go to church and I believe in God. I happen to pray to Jesus. That's my particular religion. But I don't think that because a Christian sounds hateful, that he has any more protection than a Jew or a Muslim or anyone else who sounds hateful. So if an imam were to say these horrible things about our president, I know that in the last 8 years people have been arrested for less, or at least questioned rigorously. Should we rethink how we view people like this?
No, I don't think so at all. I think every threat needs to be taken very seriously until it's either disproven or proven. Clearly, the latter being the more serious of the case. If you look at this latest circumstance, the Secret Service needs to look at the totality of it. Needs to look at what context this was taken in, and they, together with prosecutors, will make a determination on whether or not it was distasteful, rude, or arrogant, or if it rises to the level, the threshold of a threat against the president, or in this case, Mrs. Obama as well.
Set us straight on this, because I've talked to several sources, former Secret Service members, distinguished members of the Secret Service like yourself, sir, who have told me that that there is an increase and that they've seen it, that there has been more of a threat against Barack Obama than there have been against other presidents. But we've heard the figures fluctuate from all over the place, as high as what Ronald Kessler wrote in his book, which we have mentioned as well, as has the New York Times and the Washington Post, as high as 400%. That seems high to me. What is your assessment of that?
And it seemed high to me as well, and I've spoken to several current Secret Service officials, and they find no basis for that number 400 whatsoever. The service is careful not to talk about specific numbers.
Right.
There's clearly there's information that during the campaign period, threats against then candidate Obama were higher than normal. Since the election, the level of those threats, the quantity of those threats, has leveled off, where they're not that dissimilar between the current president and the two former presidents, most former presidents.
And then you and I could probably have another discussion, and maybe we'll do this one day, as to what actually constitutes a threat, because I know there's an awful lot of gray area there, and that's where some of the arguments begin. Officer Tomlinson, it's been a pleasure to have you on, sir. Thank you so much for coming in. This is important information that I think there's a lot of people out there who are worried, frankly worried, about the President of the United States. And it sounds like people like yourself are doing a good job of protecting him at this point. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.